Hello, I have Selena here with me again for more composition of the Earth. And today we are going to talk about the layers of the Earth in a new way. We've been talking about the barosphere chart and how the heaviest particles sink to the center and the lighter particles floated to the outside. And that's how we got the crust that we stand on and we live on. And so we did a lot of talking about that. Hopefully you did a lot of thinking about that. We showed an experiment where we created the layers of the earth, or represented the layers of the earth using different kitchen substances. And so the heavier particles that sink to the bottom are like the core or the barosphere, the center of the earth. And then the lightest particles up here are like the lithosphere, like the rocks that we live on, are the lightest solids on earth right here. And we have some other things happening in the middle. So we've done that experiment. We've talked about charts. We have looked at a meter stick and talked about how thick the layers are. But now I want to talk to you more specifically about how the layers have settled within their layers. So I want to look at this chart. This chart is called, the work we're talking about is called Crust, Mantle, Core. And so this chart is showing the Earth. You can see here's Africa and Australia is down here. And so it's just the Earth, or like a globe, that has a piece cut out of it. Now what we're looking down into is those heaviest particles, the heaviest particles that settled during the formation of the Earth. And they settled to the very center, and it's this darkest area here. It's labeled liquid iron core, and the heaviest particles went to the center. And then this area on the outside, this gray, is labeled plastic mantle. That is the heavy particles that settled into the center of the earth, but weren't the heaviest ones that formed the center of the earth. And then this label says solid crust. The solid crust is where the continents are and the oceans are on top of the solid crust. Now, when we look at this example, maybe you've already seen other examples or watched documentaries or learned about the inside of the earth. And that's what's so amazing about this, is that scientists are always learning more and discovering more. And so scientists don't always agree on what they believe the inside of the earth looks like, or even what it state it's in. So many scientists believe that there's a core within the earth, like this says liquid iron core, but some scientists believe that there's a hard, solid, rigid core in the center surrounded by a liquid core. Some scientists believe that there's a liquid core surrounded by a solid, rigid core. And so science is changing, and scientists have differing thoughts on that. And so that is what's labeled here as liquid iron core, but we know that science is changing and people are learning new things every day. And then this next layer is called the plastic mantle. It's called plastic mantle, not that it's made of plastic, but because it's a solid that behaves in a way like a plastic. So it bends and forms and takes different shapes. And so the particles are still moving in the mantle, but it's not a liquid, it's a solid that behaves like a plastic. We have a lot of work in our 3 states of matter lessons about types of solids. We got rigid, plastic, and elastic solids, and the mantle acts like a plastic solid. And then our solid crust, if you've ever gone outside or picked up a rock or done anything like that, you'll know that rocks, the crust, is very rigid. It's a rigid solid. So we've got some sort of liquid mix in the middle, we've got a plastic solid, and then we've got a rigid solid on the outside. So we've got all those particles that we've learned about the properties of that make up the earth. So this lesson is called Crust, Mantle, Core, because we're learning about the lightest layers floated to the outside and formed the crust. The next lighter materials made the plastic mantle, which is just under the crust. And then at the very center, there is some combination of solid and liquid, heavy, heavy, heavy particles that make up the center of the earth. Now I want to give you some measurements on this. So the thickness of the mantle is about 1,800 miles thick. That's from the crust to the core, 1,800 miles across. But the core, the inside, the part that makes up the very center of the barosphere, because it's a sphere, we measure it with a diameter, and its diameter is 6,000 miles across. So it's 6,000 miles across, and then the the mantle on each side is just under 2,000 miles thick. And so from here to the center to here would be 3,000 miles, and then 1,800 miles to there. And then of course the crust is just tiny, tiny thick. It's very thin. And it's variable. Like mountains are thicker crust, the oceans are thinner crust. And so we'll talk more about that next time. I have many, many stories to tell you about the parts of the earth and the layers and all of the exciting things about them. But those are stories for our next lessons. I can't wait to see how this inspired you to do follow-up learning about the crust, the mantle, and the core of the earth. Thank you. Bye-bye.